Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome back to session 2 of the Scite Summer Bootcamp. My name is Julia Heeson, and I'm happy to be moderating today's session on effective prompting techniques, as you can read here. Let me quickly orient everyone on where we are in the bootcamp journey. So on the next slide, as you can see here, we're in session 2 out of the 4-part series. Last time, if you joined live, we covered AI and large language models 101, really the fundamentals. And today we're getting hands-on with effective prompting techniques, which definitely is a much underrated skill. Let me pull up a quick poll here, just like as a pulse check, if you've had a chance to explore Scite at all since the last time we were on live 2 weeks ago. Okay, launching right now. So as you can see here, just select the option that applies to you, just so we kind of know how well you know Scite by now. Okay, and if you haven't joined yet, you should have received an email. If it's not working, in just a moment here, I'll add a link to the customer support email address. So feel free to reach out to them if something's not working for you. So we'll make sure you get access. Okay, let's see. Share results. Okay, so it looks like quite a lot of you have had a chance to log in, tried a few basic searches. Some have spent some more time in it, and fair enough. I know it's also summertime and lots going on right now. So if you haven't had time, that's all right. So thank you so much for letting us know. Okay, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page, Chris, you want to share a brief overview of what we covered last time?
Yeah, last time, so 2 weeks ago, first of all, we looked at sort of the evolution of artificial intelligence over the last 75 years, and particularly started to focus in on what's happened more recently. So especially with the advent of deep learning, and of course, in the last 5 to 10 years, the arrival of large language models. And if we look on the next slide, you'll see that we focused on a few key events which have happened in the last couple of years. First of all, we looked at the introduction of the transformer architecture. So through the article, Attention is All You Need, from a group from Google in 2017. And we actually looked at that architecture, looked at what the encoder does, what the decoder does, and focus on this concept of attention, which helps the model to really focus on the most important words or meaning of a sentence or a paragraph or a piece of content. We then introduced the concept of retrieval augmented generation, so RAG frameworks, which are really, really critical in helping large language models to provide much more transparency and trust in the information that they're providing by allowing them to draw on factual databases, so curated data sets such as Wikipedia or indeed journal content, to be able to show actually where these facts are coming from in the content that they're generating. We then showed and introduced Scite.ai, and the key differentiator of Scite.ai from all the other tools which are out there, leveraging a RAG framework, but doing so from smart citations, so content that has been extracted from the full text of journal articles in a copyright compliant way. And then we touch briefly on the future, where AI is going to in the next couple of years. The future is increasingly agentic. AI is becoming much more autonomous and be able to cover much more of an end-to-end workflow, whether you're studying or whether you're in your research workflows. So AI is increasingly becoming real co-workers for us in the various tasks that we want to do. And we can move on.
That was mute. Thank you so much, Chris. So same as last time, we're having a raffle, which we'll be doing on each of these live sessions. And as you can see here, the prize for one lucky attendee of all of you is a Yeti Rambler. As I mentioned, this is really our way of saying thank you for spending time with us this summer. And to the lucky winner, I'll be sending an email from my email, jheeson@researchsolutions.com, later today to let you know and how you can claim your prize. Okay, let's look at the agenda today. So in just a moment, I'll be introducing our panelists, and from there, they'll be diving into effective prompting, really why it matters, what are common mistakes, how does the anatomy of a great prompt look like. Then we'll dive into prompting strategy in Assistant, controlling Assistant's behavior, building effective conversations, going really deep into the settings there. And then we'll have time for the practical application. So same as last time, this is really where you get hands-on insight. So if you haven't already, you can pull up your Scite login or Scite Assistant interface. If you don't know where that is, I'll add that in the chat here right now. And then we'll have dedicated time for all of your questions. So down in Zoom below where it says Q&A, feel free to add your questions as soon as they come up. And this time you'll have the option to upvote questions, which will help us make sure that we answer the most relevant ones to you all. So feel free to upvote the ones that you want us to cover first. Okay, so let's look at our expert panels today. So maybe instead of me introducing everyone, I'll just let each of you briefly share a little bit of your background. And I would say ladies first. Kylie, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name's Kylie. I lead product over at Scite, so I'll be helping you guys actually applying that prompting knowledge. My background consists of data analysis at financial institutions to actually writing content in healthcare. So coming into this company, I was excited to kind of build AI for them, and that's a great way to kind of also understand how to do it in your organization. So this is just me. So nice meeting you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Kylie. Josh, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and nice to see you again. I can't see except for a big scary number of how many people are watching us. So my name is Josh. I'm one of the co-founders of Scite. I'm now Chief Strategy Officer at Research Solutions, and I'm excited for this session because we're going to go a lot more into the weeds of Scite and Scite Assistant, which I think is really valuable because you can prompt, but can you prompt well, and can you use the settings well, et cetera. So again, yeah, thanks everyone for having me.
And Chris, over to you, and then you can just kick it off directly.
Yep. Hi, everybody. So I'm originally a geologist, but for most of my career, I've been involved in helping to create products and content for scientists. A lot of my job involves talking to customers, to users, understanding their use cases, and thinking about how research solutions can create solutions to address those use cases. And we can move on to the next slide. So in our last session, we really kicked things off and framing a lot of what we talked about in regards to some of the common use cases that you have, whether you're studying or doing research. And we'll be doing much the same through this session while we look at, why effective prompting really matters. A lot of the things that we're going to be telling you or talking about is really applicable, of course, not just to Scite.ai, but also to any large language model that you are using or any generative AI application that you're using. And what it really comes down to is, the better your prompt, the better the output that you will get back from the model. Generic prompts will result in generic results. And if you're not putting enough detail or enough limitation or constraints even, often leading to a lot of irrelevant or inaccurate content being generated within the output. With Scite, there is a clear advantage because not only can you use the power of large language models, but it's also able then to provide you with transparency on where the information is coming from related to your prompt, and being able to allow you to quickly see exactly which text upon which the output was generated. If we look at the next slide, we'll see a list of prompting mistakes to avoid. This is quite a long list, and I'll focus mostly on the problems here. So some of the key problem is treating large language models like traditional search tools, not being specific enough in the prompt, so being overly vague and not putting enough constraints in place. asking prompts to do several different things at once within that one prompt, not extending or being too broad in the scope with no limitations on the prompt, expecting the output to become in a certain way when not specifying the format that you wanted to see. Also being aware that LLMs generally are trying to provide you with very positive results or agreeable, which often means that you miss a lot of context or a lot of information which would be very relevant to what you're looking at. So being able to phrase things in a way to make sure that you avoid this issue of things being too agreeable and missing out on more negative information that might be very relevant to what you're looking for. Providing context and background is really critical in helping to make sure that you avoid overly simplistic overviews of content or information that you're looking for in irrelevant outputs. And also it's important, once you've generated something, often, it's not going to be still exactly the way you want it, but you really need to refine your prompts and dig deeper in an iterative way when prompting LLMs. So this is quite a long list here of things to avoid. So on the next slide, we've kind of boiled it down to the things that you should be doing, which is a shorter list. So some of the things to really remember when doing effective prompting is to provide that context and purpose. So clearly stating your research context and what you're trying to achieve. Being very focused and specific. It's about what types of information you're looking for, the specific topics that you want to understand and want to emphasize. Really, really critically is setting parameters and constraints. Things like defining timeframes or study types. These really help to avoid irrelevant content being generated in the output. And then finally, really making sure that you specify how you would like to see the information structured in your response. So here at the bottom, we have an example. And if we stay here a moment. So I'll just read through this as it's a really good example that really brings together all these 5 points of effective prompting. So in this example, I'm preparing a background section for a review article on SGLT2 inhibitors and cardiovascular safety. Summarize the major cardiovascular adverse events associated with SGLT2 inhibitors, giving approximate incidence ranges only if they're available. Do not include or extrapolate if they are not available. Write the summary in 3 to 5 bullet points and do not include anything about SGLT1. So I think what you see here, many of us have been using GenAI for several years. We've known about needing to provide context and background, but I think what is really strongly comes through in this prompt is those limitations and those constraints, making sure that no irrelevant information is then provided in the output. And with that, I will hand over to Kylie to show you how this all works within Scite Assistant.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Now I'll be starting my next new chat session and I'll be going over how Assistant works. So based on that real life example, when you enter Scite, make sure you're logged in or you at least have signed up so you're not dealing with that limitation of free trial. You'll be entered into go into Assistant. This is where you have the opportunity to answer your question. So what you would do is essentially go into ask a question where you'll answer that real life response just like Chris has entered. You have the opportunity to set up settings, which I will chat about a little bit, kind of how you want that response formulated. Sources is great when you want to be able to get a publication overview. An upload could be one paper, dashboards is many, and publications is a subset of papers that you can select. So you can then ask a question and can be focused on a certain area. So this is a great way of essentially entering in that information prior to the prompt. We do have use tables mode, but that won't be in today's session. That'll be in an upcoming session by Dom. Check that one out next. And essentially, you'll be clicking on that icon when you answer that question. And then I will go into the next step of understanding the assistant response. So you're going to see your response load. And what you'll see is that in the center, you'll see your first prompt on the top, essentially telling you this is the question. You do have the ability to edit it back. So that's a great feature and functionality there. On in this output response as well, you're not just seeing just the answer. You have ability to take action on it too. Looking at references or looking at the side panel, you have the opportunity to actually export the references, copy this, which is called, you'll see copy link. Essentially, you can share it and then share it with other people within your organization. So whether or not you want to ask a team member, being like, hey, is this the right direction I'm going into this topic? Being able to take action. And then on the right panel, you'll actually see what actually supported the evidence to kind of build this output response. The references will be the references that were pulled. And then the search strategy, I will be talking about this a little bit later, where you can actually understand the search that was used. You could actually use Scite Assistant search and use those terms to continue to go into that topic, and also see the publications consulted. You'll actually see what were the publications that determined this claim. And if you want to continue the conversation, you can ask follow-up questions. Best practice for a current chat, keep in mind that you should probably keep it on one topic. If you feel like it's going into another, you essentially go on the top bar and you click on the little pencil icon, and that will take you back to the entry point to start a new chat. So these are some of the best practices when it comes to like how you're seeing and reviewing the response, and taking action on it as well. So I am now going to go into the settings, and that is that little tool icon with the quality in and quality out. In this section, you will see that not only you have the opportunity to actually update the settings before you enter the question at that entry point that I allowed it to, or after. This is a great way to get more insight into that certain output response. So I'm going to go delve into how some of these filters and functionality works. So when you're doing the reference requirements, this is when you want to see, do you want evidence backed, or is this something that's new? So letting assistant decide is giving you a balanced approach. So that is best when you use that certain topic. When you always use references, that means, hey, I need references, I need backup, support, and claim, and never use references if you want more of a summary. When you're going into the evidence source section, both is essentially a breakdown of, I just want I want the abstract that's appearing in the publication, and I want the citations. The citations is also what makes Scite. So when you're doing abstracts only, that's a great way when you want fresh content. This is something new, like let's say it's 2025. If you use abstracts only and there's nothing cited yet, abstracts is a great way to pull that synopsis. If you want citation statements only, everything that I am putting into this output needs evidence backed. So in this case, we're going to have citations. Once you do select that, going into number 3 with the evidence section, you can then delve into certain citation sections, such as intros, results, discussions.
Sorry, Kylie, sorry,
Yeah.
for interrupting. Can we
Yeah.
move to the next slide? Just
Yeah.
noticing that.
Yeah, no problem. I can definitely continue.
Yeah, that was just like the other slide was showing. Here we go.
Okay. Yeah. So it is essentially just the subset of that. So when going into that, that is something to keep in mind. So you have the opportunity to actually, unlike certain citation statements, pull into that. Reference year range, you get to see the range in that certain area, and citation style, you essentially see the format you want to do and the response length. The short length is when you're trying to do a broad claim. Longer is when you go into that area. I will next go into the model type, which I think you guys already saw. But essentially, when you're going into the model selection, this is something I will say is only available for organization users and premium users who upgrade. So when you do the ChatGPT 4, that is the default one. So keep in mind when you're seeing responses today in Assistant, that is the one that you're seeing. If you want to use ChatGPT 3, if people are users who are that have used this product last quarter, even prior to that, that is the older version. So if you want to see more responses and you liked that in the past, you can also use that as well. Claude is when you want more of a direct response. And the newest version is when you want a higher level of reasoning. So playing around with this with the evidence source strategy, when you do citation statements only and playing along with these settings, you have the opportunity to really go into certain topics and really change the way that tone and direction is applied. And finally, with the optimized settings, this is important because you'll actually see the publications that are actually consulted to meet these needs. Best practice when you go 1 to 10, you do not have enough insight into this certain topic. It's more broad in that direction. So starting off 1 to 10, you'll then get into like, okay, is this the right direction I'm going in? 20 to 50 to 100, this is when you are like, I have a little bit more of an idea of what I'm doing. This could be like a second question you enter within the chat and being like, hey, I want to delve into this certain outcome or this side effect. And at the end, being like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I've shared these insights. This is the direction that I'm going in. And then with references and ranking strategies, this is how we rank the publications that we are consulting. We work with over 200 publications, but we want to surface which ones are actually going to be surfaced in this output response. So relevance is the default value. We focus on topic. All is kind of like it's going into a different balanced approach. You're getting all of the different benefactors to kind of build this. Recency, if you want fresh, latest content, that's how it's going to rank. So if you have the time frame, for example, of the reference year range, and you're really caring about the recency and ranking that, use those together. And citations, supporting and contrasting, these are all things around that citation logic. Citations with high impact, backed up research, focus on that. Supporting, it's when a lot of people talk about it. Contrasting is actually a great way to get a lot of times LLMs are quite positive. Contrasting allows you to get the negative like around certain studies. So play around with these when you apply that knowledge. So that is something that is going to be key. So based on how I've shared this, I will then go into some of the pro tips here. Let me know if that is ready. So you're going to see 4 attempts that are happening. So the first attempt essentially is you are doing a very broad direction. Why this is wrong. Based on what Chris has noted earlier, it's key to actually give concise and provide outcome and kind of give a direction. When you're giving it 2 words, you're really having the assistant guess everything. And we want to take that guesswork out. So the second and fourth attempt is going to essentially share how this breaks down. So in the second attempt, this is using Chris' best practices. It's allowing us to give more of that emphasis into what you're trying to get out of that question. And when I ask, give an overview of GLP in areas of future research related and adverse side effects. Sorry, I have a little bit of a lisp. Um, Essentially, you're getting more, you're trying to pull into, this is what I want assistant to grab into this insight. So you're now having the opportunity in this. One thing I will say is when you're actually building more of your queries, pull this within that same chat session, see how it builds up and kind of improve that insight. It's a great way to kind of do that. After you then look at the response, let's say, hey, I think this is going in the right direction, but I really care about certain years in a study. What you can then do is actually explicitly call this out where you say after 2018. And what you can also do as well is add it in the settings under the reference year range, 2018 to present, allowing the assistant to be like, hey, no matter what, you have to go into this range. So as you see, when you put in the output response and you refresh it, it would then share only publications consulted during that year range. So you'll then delve into more of topics in that area because a year range from, we have quite a variety of medical research content based on the years. So different side effects and things happen during that time. So understanding that is key. And then finally, with the last one, let's say you want to invest in certain journals. By clicking on the journal section under settings, you have the ability to actually focus on certain ones. I'm going to actually share a trick with you guys. When you actually click on the assistant search strategy in that column and you go to search and go under journals, you can actually see the count of the journals added. The reason I'm calling this out is that you want to make sure that there's actually journals applied and you're also using the right language. So partner with Scite search and also that to kind of build out your query. So when you see this to life, you'll see that response come into fruition. So I will then go into search strategy. Let me know. Okay. With search strategy, why this is critical to update this. It is, you have a great prompt when you made that fourth attempt. But what essentially is happening, you don't want to add a bunch of words and context. So that's where you can actually use search. A great way to understand if you like the direction of where your search is going is first clicking on those links, as I noted earlier. So going into that, clicking on the certain search terms, there are ways that you can actually emphasize them. One is having a clear research theme. Bring in that expertise, bringing that insight and logic, using more academic research and medical language. Instead of in your prompt just listing out a bunch of words and confusing an assistant, allowing Scite search terms to essentially add this. You can also use Boolean logic here. So to bring that into life. And then a really fun thing that I like doing is actually looking into the articles themselves and actually using the natural phrasing in published studies. So when you actually edit these search queries, what you do, you would edit, click on the edit searches, you'll see the terms come to life. And then best practice, make sure you do 3 to 5. Anything more than that really dilutes that. You'll then see even more enhanced output response around that. I hopefully you guys understand how to use Scite a little bit more. This is the end of my chat session. I will now let Josh in his new chat session talk about Scite. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Kylie, and thanks everyone for the questions. We are going to do a live screen share, so I will walk you through, all the things we're talking about. I think this slide here is really building upon what Kylie said, and that is building, an effective conversation, using the right prompt, not just one sentence, not also 20 sentences to kind of get this prompt. And so as you develop the different strategies, you can really, refine things, right? And so these are threaded chats. And if you have, one topic such as summarize major cardiovascular adverse events with SGLT2 inhibitors, you can follow it up, right? And so you can say, break down the types of volume depletion events. Why do SGLT2 inhibitors reduce heart failure, et cetera? It's good if you're going to do this conversation with LLMs to make sure it is all on the same topic or to start a new thread. If you ask about SGL2 and then you ask about something wildly different in the same thread, you can get different, I would say not so great answers. And so, yeah, certainly figuring out how to use Scite, what to do, what to prompt, I think takes some practice and some training, right? And I think that's really part of this aspect is that we're looking to go through with this training. And so next slide, please. So here, right, here's the types of follow-up questions. We broke this down into 3 different categories. The first one is prescriptive follow-ups. And so, breaking down the types of volume depletion events reported, something exists, you want the details, right? And so it starts larger, it gets some, and then you want to narrow in on something. And so following up in a more narrow way will help narrow it down. Second is hypothesis generating questions. And so again, an example here is why might SGLT2 inhibitors reduce heart failure but have neutral effects on MI? Right? And so you're looking for ideas. It can go a bit different. This is maybe when you want the AI to think of things that you might not. And so, really kind of being creative, looking through the literature that we have access to and helping you generate new questions. And then the last type of follow-up question in this bucket is, really an opposing argument or debate, right? And so, what are the top 3 reasons for research finds fractures increase with SGLT2 inhibitors? And then what are the opposing arguments? And I think this is a good way for kind of using the literature to think critically about things and using AI to push yourself. We've seen tools out there starting to develop different peer review tools where it can really start to challenge some ideas. And Scite got started really in response to help researchers discover debates. And I think it's a good thing to think critically. And there's some lines of research, or at least some lines of researchers thinking hallucinations might be a good thing to find new ideas, right? And of course, you need to make sure if that's what you're doing, you're looking for these new areas. And so I'm going to start to share my screen. Maybe ahead of that, though, we did want you guys to run this evaluation, or maybe after, I should say. But I wanted to kind of show you guys this in real time, right? And so here's all the different things we're talking about on the different slides. It's helpful to talk through and to run this, right? And so this first one, summarize major cardiovascular events with SGLT2 inhibitors. Here you can see it gives a nice response. They're fully referenced sentences. What is a powerful thing that we do here is not just give you real references, not just give you, this information, but you can hover over this and you can read this information, right? So here you're now looking within the article, oftentimes in the results section, the method section, and you can read what the human said versus what the article said, right? And that's pretty powerful for you to verify these things, right? I don't think any AI tool is 100% trustworthy, and you should never approach an AI tool as being 100% trustworthy. You should look at it with a little bit of grain of salt, understand the limitations, understand the strengths, and try to optimize, and for the strengths and limit, kind of the bad things. And so this to me is what I do when I'm looking through. I'll give it a prompt, I'll hover over, I'll see these references. I can look and see this information. I can scroll through it. I can also see how has that article been cited, right? Has it been supported? Has it been challenged, et cetera? We will have this bolding, which will show you, how the AI assistant is coming up with that response. And so, it's grounding itself in this. And so that's a quick way to look through it. And we try to give you as much information as possible to really look within that article to see, okay, this is what that article is saying. It's trustworthy. As Kylie showed in some slides, there's a lot you can do here, right? And so maybe you want to start simple and you say, okay, it's giving me these references, but I don't know why it's giving me 2018 articles in 2020. And so under settings, you can specify the year period you want. You can specify publication types. And so you can build these out and say, only show me clinical reviews and systematic reviews, right? And so you get to control what matters to you, because we're all going to have different use cases. We're all coming from different research areas, and we're all going to define what best is in a different way. And so under settings, there's so much power here, right? So you get to choose the publication types, you get to choose the year range. And so maybe we'll say 2020, maybe we'll, add some, more clinical trials. You can change the citation style here. We have basically the general ones or the major ones. You can also choose BibTeX, which is pretty neutral, if you will. It allows you to use a different reference manager, and then you can change it later when you're writing. As Kylie mentioned, we have the ability to select different models. I personally like to use this one. It's a little bit slower than the base model, but I find it gives better responses, more accurate responses to things that I'm looking at. I generally choose the reasoning effort as medium. If I was really interested in something like highly detailed, I might go a bit higher. And then if I wanted to start a full draft, maybe I would go long, right? But the long response sometimes even surprises me because you can get like, pages that are like 15 papers or 15 pages. So there's a ton of different things here. It's good to explore this, to test it, to get a feel, and you'll start to see, okay, that is answering the question. Oh no, I need to slightly tweak this, etc. You can select specific journals if that's of interest to you. And then dashboards, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, to me is a very powerful workflow, right? Starting with a search, building a dashboard, and then telling Assistant to only use these groups of articles. And so if you hit this, you can hit apply. I'm going to let Assistant use both abstracts as well as the citation statements from the articles. In general, I don't touch this ever, but you can, right? If you're not getting references, you can force it to give you references. If you don't want references because maybe you want a summarization, you can ask it to never use references. But in general, you can, it does a good job of doing this. So you can hit apply, and you can see nothing's changed. Here, if you want to apply with the new settings, you hit regenerate response. And so now it's taking that same prompt. It's got different custom settings being used. It will develop this search strategy. And so you'll start to see those different searches populate. And then it will start to populate your response, right? And so here's the different searches. And again, it's not looking at all of the literature. Our entire database now is just looking at clinical trials and systematic reviews. So this is where I usually pause for questions, but you can't really ask questions with 600 people. And so here it starts to populate. And again, this is not something you can click on yet, but what it's doing is basically fact checking. So it's looking at the semantic matching, right? Is this what the article says, the human says, is this what the AI says, right? And so we don't want it to be 100% the same, right? But we want it to capture the important parts of these different things. Right? And again, you get to hover over this information to look at this. And so this is Assistant. There's a variety of different ways of toggling through the different settings. I would really encourage you to use all of them. This is just one application of Assistant. And so the other thing, that I think is kind of, I would say, a very powerful workflow is to not just worry only about the prompt, but to really start with a search, right? And so say we're interested in SGLT2 inhibitor, and we want to know about cardiovascular and maybe adverse events. Here we have done, a search with some Boolean operators, so ands. These are exact matches on the phrase. And you can see it's now searching through the titles, it's searching through the abstracts, it also searches through the citation statements as well. This identifies 1,057 records. I've also selected only 2023 articles onwards. And so what you can do is really control the types of articles that you want to give AI through the search, right? And so search has a ton of different different filters that you can select, and you can narrow it down and say, these articles must mention these things. What you can do from this is select this button. This allows you to create a dashboard. You can turn on email alerts. I'm going to turn them off. What this will do is aggregate this and say, here's the articles I care about. These articles I care about. Now you can see, in this aggregated view, it shows the metrics, et cetera. You can share this with colleagues. You can see generally, is there more or less, supporting citations happening over time, who's publishing in this area, et cetera. Why this is important, though, is if you come back to Assistant under settings, if you go to dashboards, you can now say only use these articles, right? I don't want you to go to all these different articles or to try the best with the different prompts. I'm telling you, the AI assistant, to use only these articles. And so this is a powerful way to bridge gap from search. It's also a powerful way to use, say, search from another tool, right? Maybe you're using a systematic review tool. Maybe you're using PubMed. What you can do is run a search here. I've copied this. One thing to note is that we're very comprehensive. So we're showing, roughly 2 times the results with the same search. And you can bring this information into Scite to use Assistant, right? And so we run this search. I'm going to export this information out as a CSV, and I'm going to export all results. So I'll hit create file. I'll move zoom. What this does is give you this. And so generally, this is just an example from PubMed, but generally any tool is going to allow you to export information out, whether that's a reference manager, whether that's another search tool, whether that's PubMed. And Scite allows you to bring that information in, right? And so if you copy this information, you come back to Scite, you go to product, and then you go to dashboards. Here you'll see all your dashboards that you have here. And so this is the one I created before the demo. This is the one we just created live. I will go here to hit create new dashboard. Now, this allows you to import references from Zotero, from Mendeley, so you can bring in your library. You can also, SGLT2, bring it in by copying in this list, right? And so here you can add a description. You can just simply copy these DOIs. And so I've done a search somewhere else, or I've used a reference manager, and now I'm bringing that information into Scite. And so this will create a dashboard. And again, you're able to select this under assistant settings. And so this is really powerful because you get the precision of search, whether that's, again, using our tool, another tool, and then you get to bridge that gap to our AI assistant. And this can be useful. I saw a question in the chat for some systematic reviews, right? So say under assistant, you want to look through those different articles. I'm going to clear this. You want to say, okay, I need to look through these different articles, and I want to do so, in a way that first does a summary, and then I want to know, is this done in humans? Is this done in vitro, et cetera? And so we have a powerful feature here that's, I would say, a little bit hidden, right? It says table mode. What the heck is table mode? And so I will say, summarize the articles. What this is going to do is going to basically take that AI. It's going to go through all the different articles I'm telling it to go through. So in this case, the dashboard. And then it's going to provide a short summary next to each one. And what is powerful about this, as this goes, is that you can see here's how this article has been cited. Here's the summary of this. You can, again, hover over this and look at that information directly. So is that right? As this finishes, though, you'll start to be able to build out extra columns, right? So you can go from summarization. Maybe you want to know sample size. Maybe you want to know, geography, all these different things. And so this is a good way for having AI not just start a draft for you, but really do a lot of data extraction. In some cases, if you've done a systematic review and you need to exclude or exclude articles, you can ask different things and say, was this done in humans? Yes or no, right? And so under this, it's columns, and you can say, I don't know, sample size, identify the sample size or study population. In this, you can select a standard response, which will give you a response like this. Maybe you can want bullet points. Maybe you want a yes or no, because you're going to take this into a spreadsheet and filter that way. Or maybe you want a concise response. And so again, you can build this out, and then it's going to start to add different columns. And so again, this is taking kind of the best of AI that we have. And I would say the best of research articles that we have, the best of AI, and trying to minimize, the bad things, right? Minimize the hallucinations, minimize all these different things. And so we really try to give you a lot of control to say we have this powerful AI, these powerful LLMs. How can we utilize this in a controlled way? And so as this runs, you'll start to see some responses populate. What you can do here is look at this. You won't see this, but if you're at a university, or if you're an individual, you'll see if it's open access. So you should be able to get access to it in one click. If it's available to your university, you should be able to quickly read it. If not, we try to make show open access links as available as possible. But this is largely what large pharma or corporate customers see. Another powerful aspect of this is the ability to download this. And so this is a table. It has all this information. Maybe you don't care about ISSN, so maybe you uncheck that. Maybe you don't want to care about, citations, so you can remove those. You can export this. It gives you this as a CSV, which you can share with colleagues as well. And so this is taking a little bit long because I think it's going through 588 different articles. But here you can start to see that information, right? And again, it's showing these numbers. And what you can do is hover over this and look at that information to find where it is, right? And so here it is, 27,520 patients, which is what we've said in this case, right? So you get a quick way to validate this, right? You shouldn't always just trust that. And so you can continue to build out these columns. And this is an area where we're doing a lot of development work to give you some suggested prompts to make it a bit easier to really harness that power of the AI. And so I think site-assisted tables is going to be very useful for a lot of people. And I think it takes a little bit of a learning curve, right? You need to understand how this builds. You need to understand it even exists. You know, what is table mode? But it certainly opens up a lot of different possibilities. A few other things that I'll touch upon, and then we'll pause for some questions, is you have everything under your chat history. And so here's the chat that I just ran. Here's the previous one, so you can look at this. You can also go to current chat. You can export these references out. You can also share this, right? And so this allows you to share this with a colleague to say, here's something I did. Here's all these prompts I've did. I want you to see this response, whether that's on social media, whether that's just internally with a colleague. Very powerful way to share these things. Again, this just has one thread, but if you come back to chat history and look at this one, you can see under chat history, I've done, oops, not under chat history, under the current chat, you can see that I've done multiple, or maybe you can't see because it wasn't on this one, multiple threads. And so maybe I lost that, but what I was trying to highlight is under the current chat, you'll see when there's multiple threads. So these are all single threads, but if you add another question here and go, it will start to share that out as well. And so that's a lot. We've thrown a lot at you in a pretty quick, session. I know it's a lot to cover all these different things, but I think, again, we want you guys, and this is why we've opened this up, to test it out, to try these different things, to tweak the settings, understand what you're getting, understand the different models, try them out, which one are giving you different responses, to understand that tables exist, to see a short walkthrough of how tables can be useful. Because again, you can try and do everything in a prompt, but really there's a lot of power under this gear icon and a lot of things that you should or should not do with effective prompting strategies. And so I'm going to stop yelling at you or speaking so quickly at you, and we can open it up for questions. And I think we also have maybe another poll for you.
Yes.
I'll turn it back over to Julia.
Thank you so much, Josh. This was really helpful just to see Scite in action here. So yeah, let's pull up the screen, or not the screen, the slides here again. And before we dive into your questions, and in the meanwhile, just so you know, I'm looking at them, and thank you so much for upvoting. If you haven't already, feel free to continue upvoting so we make sure we'll tackle the most relevant ones first. But let's dive into the practical application. So if you haven't already, you can pull up Scite Assistant, and here's the practical application we'd love you to try out right now as we go. And then, as Josh mentioned, we'll have a poll just to make sure that we capture your feedback, and you can share your feedback and your response here. So yeah, the ask here is open Scite Assistant, and then round one, start with a basic question about something relevant to you, of course, your research area, something you're interested in. And then in round two, let's try to enhance your prompt. So go into those settings that both Kylie and Josh talked about and try to add, for example, the year range or some demographic specifications. So really what's relevant to you. You can try out several things. So feel free to go into the settings there, refresh the response to see how it has changed, how it is evolving. And then in round three, you can add even more if it's a citation format requirement, the response length. So yeah, if you haven't already, feel free to open it right now. Do settings stick or do they reset upon logging out? Good question. Josh?
The settings will exist for the current prompt. I can't remember actually if they share between different sessions or not, but you can set it, close it, and then open and quickly answer that. Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, let's see. I'm just going to give you a moment here, and then I'll pull up the poll. Feel free to respond as soon as you have an idea. No rush here. We do want to give you some time. And yeah, I think in just a moment here, we can also go back and show you the prompt examples if you want some guidance here where you can start with. Okay, so the poll's up. Feel free to respond whenever you're ready. And as you go, if any questions do come up, feel free to add in the chat, and we'll try to help you as you go. For people here wondering what they can use as an example question, Josh, Kylie, have any, your go-to, this is like a great example prompt they could use?
I mean, I think you should try some fun ones, but try some in the field that you know, right? Like, so a lot of people will test this out by saying, okay, here's a field I know, I can evaluate how it works. Because as you go outside of your field, it's harder to say, is that right or wrong? And so I would start where you're familiar and then go a bit there. You can also have some fun. We used to have how many rats are in NYC, which is just a fun one to think about. And the remarkable thing is that there's literature on almost anything you can think of. And so it's fun to test things and how explore a bit.
Additionally, I think something you can do is like add some recommendations at the end of your prompts. I enjoy saying like conclude 1 to 2 actionable recommendations around that certain research point. So then you can actually figure out how to either build out your question or kind of delve more into that topic. I think that is key. So that's something I enjoy doing on prompting is being able to kind of delve more into that. While we said summarize, another focus point I do like saying from an action verb is like focus on. So when you're trying to do a certain area, that could be a second sentence. Just to let you know with prompting, you're not limited to like a one sentence. Expand and get more context into that. So that's probably what I would add there. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, super helpful. Okay, so no rush in playing with this. Feel free to continue doing that. We can start answering some questions as we go. So let's see. One of the questions that I've most received is actually for sharing the recording and the slides, and yes to both. I'll be sending an email to all of you, so no worries. I'll also include the replay of session 1 just in case you missed it, so you have everything there. Okay, the next question is, does Scite access only open access literature, or does it have access to paywalled journals too?
Was the person who asked this on the first session? Because if so, you should know that. So we work with publishers directly, and so we have access to paywalled articles. We have spent the better part of a decade signing partnerships, integrating and partnering with publishers. Our metrics are live on millions of publisher pages. And so, yes, that is a unique differentiating feature of Scite, is that you're able to look beyond the paywall.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that. Can someone explain more about how relevance is defined behind the scenes? For faculty I have shared Scite with, they wanted to understand more about the reproducibility of their queries. For example, will the same article always be surfaced, or is the relevance itself being generated each time?
Yeah, so it is not deterministic. You shouldn't always expect the same response. And so again, I think that's why it's powerful to kind of look at a reproducible search and to connect that to AI. If you run the same prompt with the exact same settings, you can get something that's different, right? And so that's something to be aware of. The relevancy is determined, based on search. There's a very technical way of describing this, like BIM 25, I forget what it is, which doesn't help, but it's kind of looking at key terms, right? And so it's really not saying, hey, this article comes from this journal, you should use that one over this. It's primarily looking at the language in that. Of course, you can set these different things, and we are trying to find you the best evidence source on a per article basis, not taking into account, hey, this is an impact factor, so it must be right. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How often does Scite get access to new research? Like if I search today, would I get articles published yesterday, for example?
We are constantly ingesting new articles. And so we utilize open access sources every single day. We are adding new metadata. Publishers will provide their content to us on different cadences. Some of those are daily, some of those are weekly, some of those are biweekly, and some of those are monthly. And so it depends. But at the core, our focus is good coverage. So making sure we have as much as we can, making sure it's fresh. So making sure, again, it's up to date, and then making sure it's accurate.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there a complete list of publications and literature databases that the platform taps into?
This question comes up, I think, at least once a day. There's not an easy answer to it. And so you can assume we have every open access article. We have about 40 different indexing agreements with major publishers. Some of those major publishers have 2 journals. Some of them have 2,000 journals. And so you can go to scite.ai/journals and you can look up any journal and you can see the citation information on a journal by journal basis. But, I could also send you, I guess, maybe a spreadsheet with 40,000 different rows that looks at that. And so it's a little challenge to answer this. The cool thing is, though, we go back pretty far. So we have an agreement with Royal Society, for example, and we've extracted out citation statements from, papers that are 200 years old. And so again, because the database is so large, we're creating this from the full text of the literature. We're supplementing that where we don't have full text with traditional citations. There's, really millions and millions of articles.
Josh, just to add, users could look at scite.ai/journals if they want to see that overview, or what I alluded to earlier on the search. If you're looking at a certain query and you search the journals filter, you'll also have the opportunities to see a subset of those journals. So that is also a way to kind of get an overview of that. So I figured I'd just mix that in to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kylie. Okay, how do you address hallucinations?
Yeah, so really, that's the whole kind of aim of Scite Assistant, right? Is to reduce hallucinations. So if you think about ChatGPT and kind of the arc of it, it started very early on. And again, if you're on the last session, you would have seen the Kermit little meme. It started very early on by just utilizing the training data. It wasn't going out to the web. So you'd ask a question very confidently, very quickly, give you a response. And it was full of hallucinations, right? It was making up articles. These DOIs didn't exist. And so it was totally untrustworthy in the early days. Since then, it's gotten better, right? You can ask a question in a variety of different chatbots. It will go interact with the web. Sometimes it will utilize a scientific article. Sometimes it uses a blog post. It is running this summary, more or less, this, augmented generation based on what it's retrieving as an output, right? And so what we're doing is saying, hey, don't go to the full web, go only to these articles, right? Peer-reviewed articles, and take this information AI that we're giving to you and summarize that, right? And so there's a lot of technical things, and this is a great question for, I think, the technical session later, that goes into kind of semantic matching, right? And so here's this output, here's the input. Do they more or less say the same, right? And again, that's similar to like kind of this matching that we're doing in search. And so I think there's the whole part of us automatically trying to reduce hallucinations by finding real articles. So it's not going to look throughout the article, by making sure you're not running 20 different prompts in one thread, right? Because you can tell the AI and it can really go down in the deep end. And so making sure you have a good prompting strategy. Part of that is training is part of that. Another one I would say is the UI UX, right? The AI always gets this important aspect. You can look at the precision, you can look at the recall, but being able to hover over this and say, is that what the human said, is a very powerful way to quickly check as a user, is it hallucinating? Is that trustworthy? And so we think about hallucinations from a variety of different perspectives. We, of course, run benchmarks. Ultimately, we want to publish a paper on how Scite got built. The challenge with it is everything moves so quickly. As soon as we write it, it comes out of date, right? And so you can look at some gold standards, you can test these different things, but from one model to another, you're going to have differences. And so, all these things are meant to say that, we think about this a lot. There's a variety of different approaches to hallucinating or to reducing hallucinations. Comes from training, from prompt strategies, from a lot of automated stuff we're doing in the background, and then the UI, the UX of the platform.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. And I know we're almost on time, and I noticed that the poll got canceled and I've received some questions. So here it is again. Feel free to answer if you want to, if you haven't already. Okay, let's answer one more question and let's wrap it up. And similar as last time, we'll try to take some more questions offline. And then in that email that I'll be sending out, we'll answer a few more just to make sure that we answer as many questions as possible. ChatGPT restricts free users to only do so many queries with the most advanced models. Does Scite have the same restrictions?
There are some restrictions on models that you can use. So we have two types of customers. There's large organizations, whether you're a university, a large pharma, and then individuals. The organizational accounts have no restrictions, and so they can use the most up-to-date model. The individual accounts can use most models, and you can use them as much as you can. And so it's a little similar to ChatGPT, but we're trying to be as permissive as possible so that you can get the most use out of the platform.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Okay, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining session 2. Next time, today in 2 weeks, we're on with session 3. Okay, let me share the results just in case you're curious. We'll also follow up with this. And in the next one, we're going really behind the scenes of Scite. So really a technical deep dive, kind of what you saw today, but more in depth, understanding it. So yeah, I think many of the questions that you've been asking, a lot of them will actually even be resolved on the next live session. So we hope you'll be able to join then. Thank you so much for making the time. Thank you so much, Josh, Kylie, and Chris for sharing with everyone here. And we really hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.